All right, here we are, and welcome back to our Courage Sessions. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to have a really great friend and colleague, Dr. Latanya Love, joining us today from the McGovern Medical School at the UT Health Science Center at Houston. Dr. Love, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And as we kind of get started with this Courage Session, would you mind telling us a little bit about your role in McGovern?
Sure. So I have worked in admissions and student affairs for the past 2 years. I've been an associate dean for the past 5 years. Currently, my role is the interim dean of education, but I'm still very much involved with the admissions process here at McGovern.
Excellent. Thank you so much again for joining us. And, with these Courage Sessions, they are an opportunity for each one of the schools to give a quick glimpse into the changes that have happened due to COVID-19, impacting just so many different aspects of the application process. In fact, we are fresh from a meeting where we just met with all of the other medical schools in TMDSAS to discuss some issues related to how to kind of confront and address some of the issues that have been coming up during the admission cycle. So we know you're very busy, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Kind of getting a little bit accustomed to the culture of McGovern, could you guide us through maybe some unique aspects of the school, and then we can lead into a discussion about the curriculum?
Sure. So McGovern is a wonderful place. And I can tell you that from personal experience because I trained here at McGovern. So I've been here since 2000, so 20 years here. And it just really is a wonderful place. And people will always ask me, like, what are your two favorite things about McGovern? And I say my two favorite things are, first of all, the people. It very much is a very warm, welcoming environment where we are a family in that sense. And we really, really are rooting for our students and want them to do well. Then my second favorite thing about McGovern is the location, right? In real estate, they say location, location, location. And one of the things that we're really proud of, and one of the things that I think helps to make our school special is our unique location in the Texas Medical Center, which is the world's largest medical center. So our students really do have the opportunity to see such a vast and diverse group of patients and disease processes. So it really is a wonderful place.
And so I'm gonna cut the question about curriculum because you did bring up the being in the center of the Texas Medical Center. And when we met with Dr. Cooley from the dental school right there in the same complex, he was talking about how interprofessional education kind of comes into play because there are so many other aspects of so many other education centers in there. Can you kind of walk us through some of the experiences that may be unique to McGovern because of the location?
Sure. So we are part of a health science center and we have 6 schools. So in addition to the medical school, there's nursing, dental, a school of biomedical informatics, which is, one of a kind. We have a graduate school and a school of public health and a nursing school. And so this does allow for some dual degree options as well. So we have dual degree options with our school of public health. And public health is a huge right now, just looking at this public health pandemic we're dealing with. So a lot of our students take advantage of that. Of course, you could get an MD, PhD with our graduate school. And we also have a combined master's program with our School of Biomedical Informatics because we know technology is, really the wave of the future. And just to kind of put those two together is just a whole really interesting and fascinating field. So there's options for that. And maybe you don't want to do a dual degree, but maybe you just want to have some exposure to these other disciplines. There's opportunities to do research and collaborate with some of our faculty and other schools. And then there's our opportunity to meet other health profession students who are, in these disciplines. And one thing that we do have is we have a mass casualty drill, and we include all of our schools, and we look at working together in teams because we know medicine is, teamwork is so important in medicine. So it's really nice to get some opportunity for experiences where you're learning to work as part of a team with other students and other healthcare disciplines. So there's definitely some opportunities for that collaboration. And then we do have some joint kind of student clubs where you may have some students who are dental students or graduate students. And so again, I think that's really great for networking and also just kind of forming that team, which is just so fundamental in medicine.
Absolutely. And McGovern is one of the largest medical schools in Texas. Is that not
It
correct?
is. We are the largest medical school in Texas by 10 students.
All right.
So we accept 240 medical students each year. We're one of the largest schools in the country. And even though we're large by number, I really do feel like it's a family, and it's small in the sense that, you know, all the medical students, there's so much camaraderie, and they really look out for each other. McGovern is not, you know, a place where there's a lot of competitiveness and people feel like, you know, if I have some material, study material, I can't share it with you because I don't want you to do better than me. I mean, our students really, it really is a family. And I think everybody is rooting for each other, and we want everybody to be successful. And I'll tell you, that's one of the things that probably has kept me here for all these years. It's just kind of that camaraderie and really seeing those relationships being formed, and just our students are phenomenal and wonderful. Such a very diverse group of students from all different walks of life, different backgrounds. That's something that we really value here at McGovern.
And I think this is a great segue into actually getting to talk about the curriculum at McGovern. Would you mind kind of giving us a quick glimpse into that?
Sure. So the first year of medical school in the fall, we start with a course called Foundations of Medicine. And the Foundations of Medicine course integrates content from about 12 to 13, kind of your traditional basic sciences, you know, your physiologies, your anatomies, your biochemistries. And that, along with the doctoring course, is all that you do in your fall semester. And of course, the doctoring course is very important because that's where you start to learn, how do I take a history? How do I do a physical? Where you get some opportunities to work with standardized patients. And the fall semester is completely pass-fail. Then you come back in the spring semester in January, and we start a system-based modules. And really it builds upon everything that you've learned in that Foundations of Medicine course. One other thing that I really like about our curriculum is that our students do have patient care, real patient care interaction starting in your first year, not just with standardized patients, but actually getting to do a history and physical on a real patient. We assigned you a preceptor in January of your first year, and you work with them every other week, and you get the opportunity to practice what you learned in the fall on real patients. And we also have longitudinal themes throughout our curriculum, and we integrate a lot of other topics that are so important to be a good doctor. And we do things like medical ethics. We do unconscious bias lectures. We talk about physician burnout. We have a lot of other lectures and activities that are integrated into our curriculum that are so important to helping you become a really great doctor.
Those are really key elements, especially right now. And I'm glad you brought some of those up, because the next question I'd like to ask you is about wellness. For those of you that listen to the podcast, Dr. Love was recently on the podcast, well, in the past few months, with a group from McGovern Medical School, including some current students who were talking about the importance of wellness in medical school. And kind of on that topic right now, with everything going on, what does wellness look like for medical school students?
So I'm glad you brought this up, because wellness is something that's so important to me, and something I'm very passionate about is our students' well-being. And I think, you know, most of you guys who are watching this probably know that, you know, the field of medicine really has a high burnout rate. And probably just kind of seeing what's going on with frontline workers now, you can understand why. I mean, physicians have a lot of responsibilities. They have such an important role, but it also can be very stressful. So I think at McGovern, we really look at how can we give our students kind of resiliency and self-care skills starting as a medical student. And I think this is something for all of you guys watching. This is something that's important to start doing even now before you matriculate into graduate and professional school, is really start thinking about your personal well-being. So we have a formal wellness and resilience program, and it encompasses so many things because there's so many things that contribute to our wellness. So we have a kind of a mentoring McGovern Societies program where 8 of our students are paired with one clinical faculty who they meet with on a regular basis and who can help them kind of navigate just the good and the bad of medical school, you know, any challenges that they face, can help navigate those kind of things. We have a very robust career planning and advising, because those are other things that contribute to medical student stress when they're just trying to figure out what kind of doctor do I want to be? You know, do I see myself as a pediatrician? Do I see myself as a surgeon? You know, what are the pros and cons of the different specialties, and what are some considerations that I have to think of? And then there's a financial piece to it as well, because we know that financial wellness definitely contributes to your overall well-being. And we know that many of our medical students and many of us now have faced a lot of challenges financially, especially, you know, going through this recent pandemic. And so we want to make sure our students have the support they need. They understand about, you know, the different financial aid options. We have an emergency loan fund because we know life happens and sometimes there's just unexpected expenses that people just didn't budget for. So we include that. So we do things like yoga, we do meditation classes, and we also have a strong academic support group here. Because I always say my motto is, once we get you here, we want to get you out and see you through to be as successful as you can be. So we have a wonderful learning specialist that works with our students and can kind of help them with study skills and navigating a plan for, you know, standardized tests like your step 1. So all of that is part of our wellness program because your well-being is so important. We have regular talks with our counselors in our student counseling center who, you know, talk with our students about, you know, how do you navigate the stress of being a professional student, and talking about things like test anxiety, things that are really real issues. And we really want our students to feel like if they're dealing with something, that they have the resources that they need to get through it. And again, I keep saying we're a family here. So there's a lot of people here at McGovern that can help them navigate those things. So well-being is very important. And I think all of us have to look at how we're taking care of ourselves. And I think this starts early on. So we're really proud of our program here at McGovern.
And I mean, obviously right now with so many concerns that students have, not just at medical school level, but even preparing for this, do you have any tips for wellness in kind of handling the changing landscape right now within the realm of the admissions process? Because surely we could go on for days about all the great things we could do.
Absolutely. So I know that sometimes the whole application process, the season can be stressful for our applicants. And really, I mean this wholeheartedly. You got to relax, take a deep breath. If you're getting stressed out about, you know, writing your personal statement, or as you're trying to fill out the application, as you're studying for your MCAT, there are some times when you just need to take a mental health break. Sometimes those breaks are, I just need 15 minutes. Other times it's like, I'm going to close these books and I'm going to start fresh tomorrow after I get a good night's sleep. I also think it's important, you know, for students to, you know, applicants reach out if you have questions. I can tell you that, you know, we have an email that we encourage students who have a particular question just to reach out to our school. And I can tell you that our sister institutions, I know that everyone on their admissions team is very sincere as well. We are here to help you navigate this. And this is tricky and complex because we're trying to do this in the midst of a pandemic. And this is new for all of us. It's new for us, you know, as admissions officers. We've never had to deal with this either. So there's things that we're having to adjust. And there's times when it can be stressful for us as we're trying to figure out navigating this kind of new world in this virtual world. And I do believe things like Zoom fatigue, I believe that's real, you know, because a lot of us, I mean, myself, I'm on, you know, kind of virtual Zoom meetings for a large amount of my day. And so there's sometimes when I'm just glad that I'm not on a video interview, or doing a meeting virtually. So I think it is just really kind of recognizing when maybe you just need to, take a deep breath, not being afraid to ask for help if there's something you're just really unsure of, if you need something. I think it's very important to reach out to the schools that you're applying to, or to the admissions teams. And we have such a good resource, right here with TMDSAS. There's a lot of information on your websites, that I think is very valuable for applicants who are trying to navigate the admission season in a pandemic.
Yeah, it's definitely a team effort.
Oh yeah, this is a team effort.
Hands down. Well, we do have Dr. Love kind of stuck here with us for a little while. So if you have any questions for Dr. Love about, McGovern Medical School, the admissions process, if you have any specific questions about your situation, she's here to answer all of your questions. The first thing that we have come up here is McGovern is definitely one of my top choice schools. So yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't win you any points in the application process, but we appreciate the enthusiasm for McGovern Medical School. So kind of looking at all of the different things that have come into play this admission cycle, could you walk us through how the McGovern Medical School review process may have been changed by COVID-19?
Sure. So we know that some of our applicants might have experienced or still be experiencing delays in taking their MCAT exam. And so we don't want to hold that against you. So we've kind of pushed things back a little bit. So we're not going to start on our original. Historically, we start interviewing in August. So in August, we're only going to do some of our assured acceptance programs, special programs like JAMP, but we're not going to start our actual interview season until September. And so we're pushing things back a little bit just because we know there may be people who have delays in transmitting their application or completing their application with things like the MCAT and trying to get those letters of recommendation in. So we really want to be aware of that. It is very important to us that we try and make it an equitable process for everybody. So we really want it to be fair. So we feel like, pushing what we're doing back some helps to give a little bit of extra time for people that might be experiencing delays that are not your fault, right? So I think that's one of the biggest changes for us. We are starting to review our applications. And one of the things, our admissions committee, we've been meeting regularly throughout this whole time just to talk about, things we need to do different, things we want to make sure we're just kind of aware of. We recognize that, starting in March, it was impossible to do, community service, to go shadow, or kind of, you might have been participating in some research or something, and then that all just stopped. So I think that it's important for people to know that the admissions committees, and I can tell you our committee here at McGovern, we are aware of that. And since we do a holistic review of your application, we definitely look at your whole package and the different pieces of your package, not only those experiences, but we are looking at your letters of recommendation. We're looking at your personal statements. We do have a secondary application that does give you an opportunity to kind of let us know a little bit more about you. And maybe you had some type of special circumstance, especially during the pandemic, that personally affected you. And there's an opportunity for you to let our committee know. So there's definitely, we're looking at our applications this year in a different lens because we have to, just because this is a very unique situation. And we know that there are very good qualified applicants who may not have been able to do all the things that historically a lot of applicants have been able to do. So our committee is very, very flexible and really, really committed to making sure that we don't miss those students.
And kind of on that same topic, we have a question that came in to the chat. Given the risks of testing, the cancellations of the MCATs, and potential current difficulties for applicants from underrepresented communities, although I don't believe that's what we've seen with the data. Will McGovern consider making the MCAT optional for applicants this cycle?
I don't think that's going to happen this cycle just because we have to have a set standard of policies and procedures kind of before the application cycle starts. Because like if we said right now, oh, the MCAT is optional, then it's almost unfair to the students who thought that the MCAT was required and they've submitted it. So it may, and what I will say is though, there are some active discussions, and we were just on a meeting with Texas schools, and we're having a lot of discussions, just about how can we be fair and understanding the challenges that students are facing with taking the MCAT. And one of the things that is really important to us is to continuously monitor the data to see if we're noticing and comparing data from this cycle to previous cycles to see if we notice that we're not seeing as many URM or students who come from a socioeconomic disadvantaged background, looking to see if those applicants are not getting their applications through. But all of the data so far, and we know that there's still a lot more applications to come, is showing us that there's actually an increase in the number of applications, and there's not a difference in looking at certain kind of diversity categories as of now. But again, this is data that can change, weekly. This is a very fluid situation. So it's something that we have to really be very abreast of and to continuously follow it. I will say that, admissions committees and admissions teams have really stressed to the MCAT team the importance of safety for these applicants, because your health, is of priority, and your safety is, of course, the most utmost priority to us. So we want to make sure that they're doing things to ensure that, there's social distancing, that students feel comfortable in these exam settings, because I know it's already a stressful exam. So we don't want it to be even more stressful because you're saying, you feel like other people who are taking exams are a little too close, or, maybe people aren't wearing their mask, or you just feel like it's just not a comfortable environment. So the MCAT has recently sent out some things to kind of assure the admissions community that they're doing as much as they can on their part to make sure it's safe. But it's really a challenge, and these are some very important topics that are, we're going to be discussing throughout this season and beyond.
Right. And kind of a follow-up from that same question, you mentioned, or you alluded to, the interview cycle being extended or adjusted this year. Would you mind sharing a little bit more on that?
Of course. So as most schools, our season's going to be completely virtual. And so what we're doing is just looking at ways on how we can still give our applicants a really good experience in terms of getting the feel for McGovern and getting the information they need about our school virtually. So we're working on that. But historically, we are done interviewing, like first week in January. We know that we're going to have to extend that just because, again, we're starting our interview season a little bit later. And we want to make sure we see as many really, great qualified applicants as we can. So that's going to look different. And then, of course, doing an interview virtually is going to look different for all of us. So, but I think there's a lot to learn about this because, there's some things that I think we've had to adjust during a pandemic, and we've learned that maybe this is a more efficient way to do things. And I think we're all thinking of everybody's safety. We're thinking about, financial, and we want to make sure that, we're aware of kind of the challenges that applicants are facing this season. So, I'm excited about our upcoming season. I think that it's different, but since this is kind of like our new normal for this season, I think we're going to have to make lemonade out of these, lemons that we've been given, and really try our best to engage with applicants the best way that we can, kind of in this current environment. So I'm looking forward to it. It's the challenges, because technology, there's going to always be some challenges where, it was just storming here in Houston. So you could have a storm and your internet connectivity isn't that great. And, I'm in my office where there's better internet, but I mean, there's times when when I'm working from home, and sometimes your cable, everything goes out and you're like, oh my gosh. But I think none of us can panic. I can't panic as the person doing the interview. We don't want you guys as the applicants to panic. We are trying to prepare our committees for these scenarios as best as we can. What happens if for some reason, the connectivity goes out? How are we going to kind of problem solve through some of the challenges that we may have because of this? So we're up to the challenge. So I think we're going to try to do our best and really make this a really great season for all of our applicants.
Yeah, I think the key here is that the schools are open to hearing all of this feedback from students. If anything happens during your virtual interviews, reach out to the schools. If you have questions about the admissions process, reach out to the schools. I mean, the level of transparency really is extraordinary, because not just because this is a weird year with so many changes going on, but because the schools are really have a vested interest in educating applicants, in making sure that the process is as clear as possible. And as you see with these courage sessions, these conversations are happening not just here, but everywhere. So thank you. We have a question about the screening process. Does McGovern have a special screening process for reapplicants?
No. We have the same screening process for every applicant. So we get lots of reapplicants, and I will tell you, every year we see a large number of reapplicants that are successful, who have looked at their application to see where there are areas that they can improve on, and they've done that, and they are very successful. So I always tell people, don't feel like you're at a disadvantage if you're a reapplicant, because we have one of our, I always think about this student who really was a star. He's graduated now, but I mean, he didn't get into medical school. It was his third time, how they say third time's a charm. And so, and he really was a star here. So we don't have a separate process for screening. We feel like it's very important to kind of utilize the same process for every applicant, because it's very important in admissions to make sure that we have a fair and equitable process. I mean, that's something that's really important to us here at McGovern.
Excellent. And for applicants, a lot of the discussions that we've had right now are really for applicants for this application cycle, but what about future application cycles? The question that's being asked here for those that are applying for, 2022, 2023 and beyond, do you think it's going to be more competitive because people are pushing their application to another cycle due to the pandemic?
It's hard to say. I mean, we never know what each season is going to hold, but I still think that, if you're not preparing to apply this current season, just to really keep thinking about how can you have the strongest application you can for the next season, looking at preparing to take your MCAT. So trying to navigate that and properly studying for that, starting to look at your personal statement. And I do think it's actually going to probably even be more of a challenge for next cycles in terms of like volunteer community service, healthcare related experiences, just because, everybody's kind of had from March until we know, currently still things are kind of at a halt in terms of being able to allow students to kind of safely come back and do research projects and do community service. So I think those types of things are going to be a challenge to get those experiences. But the good thing about it is that medical schools and our admissions committees, we have really looked at ways to try to adjust to these challenges and making sure that we continue to use a holistic approach, and looking at other ways to just, see your motivation, see your understanding of the profession.
And I think, one of the misconceptions about this application cycle is that there are a lot of applicants who are postponing their application to another year, which is a perfectly valid opportunity for certain students. But we're actually seeing a historical amount of applications coming in this application cycle. So if for those of you that are applying, maybe it's in a year or two or more, don't fret, because the process is still here, and we're not seeing a huge amount of deferrals to other application cycles.
The medical schools aren't going anywhere. That's why I always tell people when they're like, should I delay? I'm thinking about delaying. Everybody has to look at your personal situation and think about like what is best for you and your circumstances and your situation, and where you are in terms of the application process. We're not going anywhere. So we will still be here next cycle. So I think it is completely reasonable if you feel like, you're not quite ready to apply, take a gap year or 2 or 3, or, whatever really kind of fits your personal circumstance and situation, and do whatever it is that you need to do to feel like, you're going to get your application to be as strong as it can be. We're going to be here.
Mm-hmm. And we have a follow-up question to the secondary application. Number 1, is there a fee associated with it? And number 2, where does that money go to at McGovern?
So we do have a secondary application fee, but if you have been approved for a waiver from like the MCAT, if you show us that, we will definitely waive it. We have a huge team to manage, one of the largest medical schools. So there's a lot of different resources that secondary fee goes to. So it's something that we use to kind of sustain our operations here.
And especially,
no, it's not going to like Dr. Love or anything like that. But it's definitely going to sustain our admissions operations.
So there's no secret yacht fund.
There's no secret yacht. I wish I had a secret yacht that I could go sail on and just get away from everything, but I don't.
Nope. But yeah, I mean, especially from what we've heard from some schools, there have been several overhead costs with moving interviews virtually.
Yeah, and I think people might think, oh my gosh, it's probably a lot cheaper. Why do they need this? But my goodness, the technology to be able to do virtual interviews, and thinking about all of the many interviewers that we have, and we've got to make sure we have the technology for that. And not only that, we've got to have the support. It's not as cheap as we thought it would be. When you're thinking about it, there's definitely things that we have to think about, and we want to make sure that again, everything needs to be done securely. So we have to work with our IT team and our IT security. So there are a lot of fixed costs that I don't think I would have even imagined. So, but I'm certainly learning about it.
Right. I think we all are.
Yeah.
If an applicant decides not to apply this cycle because they are an essential worker, this cycle, would it affect them for the next cycle?
No, but I think they would have I want to know about that. If you were an essential worker, I think that's something that is great to probably share somewhere in your application, probably in like a personal statement or a secondary essay, because I'm imagining that might impact, you and your health desire to, be a physician and be a doctor, and maybe how you might interact with patients, especially if you're an essential worker. So no, we understand that. We thank you. We thank all of our essential workers. But no, you would not be penalized or disadvantaged. Again, I think everybody has to look at their personal situation and kind of think about what is the right time for me personally to apply.
We have a question about non-traditional students. How receptive is McGovern to non-traditional students? I'll be 29 when I apply and 30 if I get accepted the first time around.
All right, so I will tell you here, we love non-traditional students, and age is just a number. I mean, really. So I think that do not let that discourage you from applying. And actually Enrique and I were just talking about, we have some really great non-traditional students here, and they have been very successful. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed anecdotally is that sometimes our non-traditional students are really some of the top students. And I think a lot of that goes with just the life experiences that they have. And sometimes they're, because they've they might have had a career or done something else, they're very disciplined and regimented in their studying. So they're really, really great students. So do not let the fact that you are a non-traditional student deter you from applying if you feel like this is something you want to do.
Excellent. And we're kind of a sneak peek for something that's in the works, is we are going to have a courage session with some non-traditional students to address that firsthand. We'll let you know once those are scheduled. Another question here is, how are multiple MCAT retakes looked at? I will be on my 4th and hopefully last retake.
So we look at your highest score. So we don't hold that against you if you have had to take the MCAT multiple times, because sometimes that's our story. And so we do not hold that against you, and we will use your highest MCAT score in our evaluation of your application.
Excellent. And another question here, and I think it's going to be a great segue for another talking point that we had in mind. In regards to recent events over the past few months, what are some current initiatives, or does McGovern have any future plans to make the admissions process more racially equitable?
So I will tell you that kind of an equitable process is something that even before kind of the recent events, things like the death of George Floyd and a lot more discussions about social justice and racial inequalities, that is something that was important to our admissions committee even before the current events. And it's something that continues to be important and something that we continue to have discussions about. We certainly value diversity here at McGovern. We know that diversity enriches the educational environment. Houston is actually the most diverse city in the country. And so it is very important to us that we are training students and that we are admitting students so that they can take care of this diverse patient population that we serve here and that they will interact with during their clinical rotations. So I think it's a very important topic, and it's one that has been on our radar even before kind of the current events that have plagued our community recently. So it is something that we are constantly talking about. And once you do get here, what I will say is we have a lot of topics on this, on unconscious bias, social determinants of health, race and medicine. These are things that are integrated into our curriculum because we think these are important topics. And, I always call some of these topics are difficult conversations to have, but we think for our future healthcare workers, for our future doctors, it's really important to do. So it's something that we are always constantly looking at and evaluating.
Thank you for that. Do you know that cultural competence is a core competency that has been defined by the AAMC? And I know you've been very active with the group that has really fought to implement all of these core competencies implementation across the country. But particularly in regard to cultural competency and really addressing implicit biases that applicants may have, what advice do you have for somebody who's kind of like waking up right now and saying, oh my God, I have a lot of work to do because this is the pathway I want to pursue? So what advice do you have for students who are exploring this?
So I feel like it's never too late, like you said, if you're just kind of recently waking up. And I think what's important is just to kind of educate yourself on some of the issues that, different populations from different backgrounds may face, and really look at how does it affect healthcare. There's been lots of studies that kind of look at this and kind of look at the biases. Because here's the thing, we all have biases, myself included, you, all of us do. But it's how can we kind of recognize the biases that we do have, and what are some things that we're going to do to try to work on that. So sometimes it means getting outside of your comfort zone. I mean, some of us grew up in communities where there was not a lot of diversity, or there still is not a lot of diversity. So you look at opportunities you might have on college campuses, or just other things that you might be doing to kind of, talk to different people and communicate with different people and participate in different things with different groups from what you always know. And I think that is a great way to start, just educating yourself even a little bit more on different topics. There's so many, great books out there, great articles, great podcasts, from really reputable sources. So I think that it's something that is very important. And again, like I said, we do value diversity here at McGovern. So I always say, we don't want a cookie cutter medical school class. We do not want students who are all from the exact same school, who all are from the same city, who are the same ethnicity. We want students who are very diverse in their experiences, in their background, in their socioeconomic status, because that's how we can learn from each other. Just again, because the patients you are going to serve are going to be from all different walks of life. So no cookie cutter medical school class here.
And if I may, you all have published, as part of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, some amazing resources, including implicit bias resources and articles, resources for LGBTQ+, on microaggressions, race and medicine, suggestions for podcasts, videos, how it affects recruitment and retention. So I'm going to share a link to that on the chat here. And for those of you listening in the podcast or in one of the videos, we'll include that in the description so that you all can take a look at these resources, because they are fantastic. Especially if you are in need of kind of a place to start. This is a great place to start.
No, thank you for sharing that. Feel free to look, at our resources page and look at some of the articles. And I will tell you that the resources that we share, we are an academic medical center, so you'll see some journal articles, because it is important to look for us that we're looking at, data to kind of back up things and kind of theories and what works and what doesn't work. So we try to do that. And there's room for improvement for each and every one of us. So yeah, it is definitely a great place to start, and we welcome you to look at our resources, our diversity office resources page.
Great, thank you. Some more questions here. What role does socioeconomic status play in an applicant's profile as it's viewed by McGovern? And would you mind talking a bit about the opportunities for students to work with low SES populations in their own communities?
Sure. So we do look at that as, one of the different elements of diversity, and just kind of looking at, everybody has a different road traveled to kind of get where they are. And we know that, sometimes if you're in a lower socioeconomic status, there might be more challenges and barriers, or you might be a first generation college student. And these are all things that we are looking at as part of our holistic application and review, of your application. And I think that it's wonderful when people would like to get involved with different SES socioeconomic communities, especially in the communities that you live in. Make sure you're doing it safely though, because, right now, we do have some challenges, and we want to make sure you're doing things safely. But, sometimes it's just kind of learning about, what are some of the issues that are in your own backyard. Here in Houston, we're in this really beautiful medical center, but you just go a few miles down and you can be in areas where there are food deserts, and, areas where there is a lot of poverty. There's homelessness, there are parents that have to make decisions about, feeding your child or buying a medication for their diabetes. These are real issues and the real type of patients that we expose our students to. And we do something in our curriculum during the second year of medical school. It's called a poverty simulator. And what we do is it's a event where we have students who they kind of play different roles, and they may get assigned and say, you're John Doe and you are a Metro bus driver, and this is what you make every other week. You're supporting your parents, and just kind of navigating navigating what would this look like on the other side as a patient when you're trying to navigate a very complex medical system that we have, and you only have a limited amount of resources. We have patients that they are not able to read. And these are sometimes things that we do take for granted as healthcare workers. And you may give them information or tell them something or go look this up, and they just may not have the ability to do that. So these are things that are very important in the practice of medicine, and something that we really try our best to integrate in our curriculum here at McGovern.
And, the TMDSAS application has an entire essay devoted to exploring how you enrich the educational environment based off of the different skills or background that you come from. And so I know I've definitely worked with a lot of students who say, I really don't have anything special. And I think being exposed to experiences like that leading up to the application, I think really enhance that, because it really opens students' eyes to how different people live and the different types of communities that they'll be working with as physicians. Excellent. We have a question here from somebody who's asking, how do we address this semester when you have kids at home in your application? So that's all I have here, but making some assumptions here, if you have kids at home and all of a sudden everybody's at home and sheltering in place, and there really isn't much they can do, how would somebody address that in their application?
So I think there's, opportunities in your essays and your secondary essays just to talk about maybe some of the challenges, so maybe you were at college and then, you had to come back home because everything transitioned to online. And maybe, you're a large family and there's multiple people that live in your house. I think we want to know that because we know that is a reality for our applicants. And sometimes we have people that are trying to, have responsibilities for kind of watching younger siblings because the parents still have to go out and work. I mean, we want to hear, how have you grown as a person, and, what has this kind of dealing with some of the challenges through the pandemic, how do you feel like that has, made you grow as a person, and how do you think that will make you a better position? Maybe it's taught you to be a more patient person because, if you were somebody who used to just maybe living on your own, at college, and then you have to go back with your family. And then there's other responsibilities that, we can all have for our family. Well, one of the things that it teaches you is time management, because now you're having to balance some things that you may have to do to help your family. Maybe if it's even, cooking meals, or like I said, watching a sibling, or maybe helping to take care of a family member. How have you grown? I think that as an admissions committee, that's what we want to know, because ultimately those are the kind of things, if you're having to learn time management, if you're having to learn more patience, if, you've seen a personal friend or family member, maybe somebody personally has dealt with COVID. It teaches you to be a more empathetic person. These are all traits that we want to see, in our future doctors. So I think what you have to look at is how can you let us know about these experiences? Because we're not going to know about it if you don't tell us about it, right? So, see how you can put this in your application somehow.
Excellent. I think that tactic of being really strategic with how you introduce those pieces of information in your application is something that an advisor would be really helpful for any applicant, either currently or future, because a lot of our advisors will actually form are part of a committee that will kind of direct the messaging of your letters and submit a committee packet that reinforces certain skill sets that you want to have reinforced to the admissions committees. Where other times, if you're submitting letters individually, they'll help you craft what you want to develop in that messaging, as well as preparing your essays. I mean, advisors are your Yoda. They're there to help you from every single step of the way. So take advantage of those. Of access to advisors. And if you don't have access to advisors, we invite you to join you in our online communities, the TMDSCS Hub and the TMDSCS Non-Traditional Students groups. We have advisors on there who are ready to help. Or if you need somebody, an advisor more attentive to your needs, we definitely will be able to point you to national resources to connect you with advisors. All right, we are kind of short on time, so we're going to do these last few questions on a kind of rapid fire. Have we talked about what the interview day will look like this year? It's online, but will there be any other information sessions during the day?
Yeah, we're going to still have student panels. We're going to still have a welcome presentation. We're putting together a kind of a virtual tour just so you can see virtually our facilities and our teaching hospital. So we're going to, some of the videos we'll send beforehand that you could kind of watch, you know, on your own time before the interview, and some of it will be during the interview day. So we're going to do our best to make sure you know as much as you can about our school and get all of your questions answered.
Excellent. And the next question, and Ayana, I believe you may have to go back to the earlier parts of the session because we did address already the interview process and the secondary application process for McGovern, but I know, Dr. Love, you mentioned the question about how COVID has affected students as part of the secondary application question. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about the McGovern secondary?
The McGovern secondary is just another way for us to get to know your story and kind of what motivates you. And again, if you've had any special circumstances, so it just allows us to get another piece of that puzzle in your application and get a really good glimpse of who you are and kind of what your motivation is. So we read through all of your applications. I mean, all of your essays. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I'm writing this. I mean, we really do read through this, and we have some fascinating applicants who really have some great stories. And then we have people that, you know, traditional, non-traditional. I mean, we really enjoy interacting with our applicants, you know, on interview days and interacting with our students once they're here. So really our secondary application is really just another way for us to get to know a little bit more information about you.
Excellent. And before we let you go, these are courage sessions. We are here to encourage people to continue down this pathway, never give up. You fought way too hard to let something like a global pandemic stop you. So do you have any advice for current or future applicants who are affected right now and kind of feel like they might just be floating around waiting?
Sure. You know, I'm big on wellness, so really try not to stress out. Again, I know this is a very stressful time for all of us, you know, being in a pandemic. I know applying to medical school can be very stressful for a lot of our applicants. Just as we have to be flexible as an admissions committee and as a school, you know, just to be flexible to what our current, you know, environmental landscape is. Allow yourself some flexibility. You know, sometimes things don't work out as planned, but that's okay, you know, because things usually have a way of working itself out. Sometimes, you know, we all have to go kind of different routes to get to, you know, from point A to point B, and that's okay as well. And just look at your situation. Try your best to not compare yourself to other people, because sometimes that can be, you know, it can be nerve-wracking if you're kind of saying, oh, but I'm not like this person and that person, and oh, I didn't do this. Be realistic though as well. If you feel like your application is really not at its best, you know, if you feel like, you know, you're studying for the MCAT and you're really not ready to take that exam, you know, based on practice, it's okay to pause and say, you know what, even if I have to apply the next cycle, do whatever you can to make sure you're putting forth your best in that application. We want to see your best. And I always say, you know, if I can do it, you can do it. I went to medical school a long time ago, back in the 90s, but it's doable, you know. So always, you know, follow your dream and just look at, if you are facing challenges and obstacles, look at, you know, what are some things you can do to strengthen your application where you feel like it's weak, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Excellent advice. And for those of you looking for more tangible pieces of wellness to integrate into your lives, I highly recommend that you go back and listen to the episode where we talk to Dr. Love and the rest of the wellness team, because there are some great resources in there for you. And on behalf of the Texas Health Education Service and TMDSAS and McGovern Medical School, we'd like to wish all of our applicants all the best of luck, and we will see you soon. Dr. Love, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. Good luck, everybody, and stay safe.
Thank you.